you who don't know me, I'm Breege Leahy. I'm the CEO of Hertfordshire Chamber of Commerce, and we're absolutely delighted this morning to bring to you, with the Hertfordshire County Council and the Better Business for All team from all over the county, a webinar and an opportunity for you to ask questions about trading safely and trading with confidence once we begin to reopening the businesses from next week. So it's a very important time in all of our lives that we're seeming to get back to normal. So there'll be a short presentation and an opportunity for you to ask questions. Please feel free to put a question in the chat room as well as we're going along, and then Lauren Dovey, who's on the screen, will be able to pick those up as we go along. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our speaker, Frank Harrison. And Frank is the Environmental Health Manager from North Herts District Council. But we have a whole plethora of his team on this call today to help navigate you through this transition to reopening. So over to you, Frank, and thank you.
Thanks for that. I know whilst I would happily love to accept all you guys as my team, I'm very upset to say they're not all part of my team, but they're all obviously more than happy to answer any questions as come through. Yeah, as briefly mentioned there, I'm the Environmental Health Manager over at North Herts District Council. And for my sins, I've been asked to give this brief presentation about trade safely and trade confidentially. Lauren, is the presentation going to be on the screen, or is that for people to flick through as they wish?
Yeah, I can share it for you if that's easier.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'll just ask you to click through to the next page if you can, Lauren, as we go through it. Throughout the presentation, if anybody has any questions, as was mentioned, please either send them through to Lauren via the chat, and happily try to answer those as we go through. Okay, that is the presentation for today. Hopefully we're going to give you some advice as to enabling you to open your business in a both compliant and a safe manner. Please ignore my throat. It should last all the way through. I've had this ongoing throat problem for a fair while, and it's nothing to do with COVID, I can assure you, even though I'm probably many miles away from most of you anyway. If you can just click onto the second slide, Lauren, please. This is just a roundup, as it says, of where we are with the lockdown release roadmap. We've obviously gone through step one. We're just approaching step two, where most of businesses, or many businesses, can open to a lesser or greater degree. And it's because of that that we are largely focusing on the issues as far as this meeting is concerned, this webinar is concerned. Steps 3, 4, they should be coming, as it says, in the next few weeks, months. As you notice just under the banner on those, there is the intention of leaving a 5-week gap between each stage, and that is to allow us to see how the previous stage has impacted on the COVID numbers, on the infection rates across the country. That 5-week period, it isn't set in tablets of stone, although it's certainly the recommended guidance from which the government is set is based its release stages on it. A number of organisations, a number of businesses are arguing that 5-week period should be different. Many businesses are saying it should be shorter. Other organisations are saying it should be longer. 5 weeks is sufficient to show us at least an indication of where we are with far as the infection rate. So that is why it stayed. Is currently set at 5 weeks, should anybody be of any interest in that. Next slide, please, Lauren. As far as businesses, hospitality businesses and retail and food businesses, can that change forward? That's it. Thank you. Certainly, businesses are going to be allowed to provide food some degree of entertainment and refreshment, etc., from their premises. Clearly, at the moment, businesses are not allowed to serve fully indoors, but where there is the provision is for the outdoor areas to be used as part of their business. And just for clarification, because we are already seeing, some of the enforcement officers and local authorities are already seeing businesses being rather innovative as far as what outdoors stroke indoors actually means. The legal parameter for what is outdoors is exactly the same as for your smoking shelter. So if the unit, the marquee, the shelter, the pod, the whatever, if it's substantially enclosed, i.e. more than 50%, it is not legally permitted. So while some of these innovative glass bubbles and yurks and pods and all those sorts of things look very fetching and very attractive, the majority of those would be illegal under this step 2 release because they provide more than 50% enclosure of the units. So please just bear that in mind when you're looking to invest in some kind of outdoor weather shelter. There are some quite nice ornate marquee roofs, marquee tents and the like. And as long as the sides are down and are not provided, then they should generally be sufficient. But your 3/4 enclosed, 2/3 enclosed unit would not be permitted, I'm afraid. As the notes say, please also continue to use the other safeguarding measures, so things like face coverings, sanitisation, deep clean, adequate cleaning between separate customers when they're using these various chairs, benches, pods, etc., etc. Make sure that fully stays in place. The other aspects of the business, things like the takeaways and click and collect, they obviously still can continue. This is just to allow you predominantly to provide some outdoor service, outdoor trading for your customers. Next slide, please, Lauren. Don't forget the numbers of people who can mix and match. They are still being restricted. At the moment, we have for the outdoor settings, as it says on the top there, 2 households and 6 individuals as a group. Now, clearly, a food business or a hospitality business offering outdoor service will have more than the 6 individuals, but as long as each individual group is isolated to be no more than the 6 or 2 households, then that's permissible. If you find you are being asked for groups of more than 6, then by all means try to ask as to how they are divided. I mean, clearly you're going to have to be reliant on the people's information. You can have families of significantly more than 6 people. That's understandable. It's just what measures are you carrying out to check the numbers in groups to allow you to comply with that 2 households, 6 individuals. The issues regarding floor markings, one-way systems, social distancing, as before, like with the deep cleaning, like with the face mask and the like, they still exist and they are there to maintain an element of safety. And the other key aspect on there is that food and drinks must be consumed while seated. We're not yet at the point of standing by the bar, ordering or even consuming the food and the drinks. It has to be table serviced in the various places where you're providing such arrangements. Okay. There is the concern that has been raised by a number of businesses as to as far as access to the actual seating location, that there is no reason why that cannot be through a premises, so through the pub to the back garden, but that transit through the premises must be managed and it must be continued in that clear, precise walkway with those small groups of people, again, isolated. You're not allowed to keep those people mixing and mingling on that route and that transit. And the same thing will obviously apply as far as going to the toilets. Try to manage that system. If at any part in your premises you need people to be queuing, make sure that queuing is separate, socially distanced, and there is that provision for hand washing and hand cleaning and face masks. Okay, next slide if you can, all right. During the previous lockdown release, there was the issue regarding track and trace. This is far more important now than it was previously, and it's being the requirements to keep records of the people concerned, people visiting your premises, is more stringent than ever. You, as a business owner, you need to have a system in place where you can, at the very least, ask everybody who's there to provide their contact details. Ideally, if that can be done at the point of booking, rather than at waiting to collect when they turn up, that will be ideal and a lot less problematical. You, as a business venue, as a hospitality venue, you do have the right to refuse entry to people who will not follow the requirements of your establishment. And it's being strongly advised, recommended, required that if anybody refuses to give their details as part of the track and trace for the groups that you're inviting on site, that group should be refused, or at the very least that individual should be refused. How far you want to go down that avenue, clearly we'll leave that entirely up to you, but I would expect that as an enforcement officer to see that you have that system in place. The importance is that we can therefore keep track of all those people who are present on site, should the need arise, that if there is a suspected COVID outbreak linked to your premises, then we can trace back all those people who were present during the infectious time, and we can ask and require them to isolate. It's only by keeping people safe from the virus and those that are infectious, that they are then isolated, that we can control the virus count, the virus spread, and that we can allow us to progress to step 3 and then step 4 as far as the time schedule planned. If we cannot trace those people who are infectious, we will have no control over the spread of the virus, and we could end up with a far more stringent lockdown again, the 3rd wave as is currently hitting Europe, rather than the gradual release as is being benefited in the country over here. Okay. Please display your QR codes if you can get those, and they should easily be available via that website. The business does not have access to the QR codes. We do not have access to the QR codes information at the moment. That goes straight to the NHS. So although a lot of business users do click on the QR code to record their presence, there is still that necessity for you as a business owner to keep a record of the customers that you have on site, because we cannot otherwise trace who is present. Okay. This is all covered by the GDPR, the data protection regulations, but this supersedes it. This is far more important for that 21-day period, that if we need to contact the person who may be infectious, we can require that information from you. Okay. Next slide, please, Lauren. As mentioned before, don't forget what all the systems you've had in place up until now. The social distancing, hand cleaning, sanitizing, ventilation. The ventilation is very, very important. It's been increasingly identified as being one of the more important means of stopping the virus spread. And that's why at the moment, the only areas whereby we can continue hospitality trading is in the open air. Okay, so please continue with those aspects of it. Again, next slide, please, Lauren. The next few slides are essentially just sources of information. Please, by all means, click on these various pages if you need to. What I will stress is today is the 8th of April. Every business in the country has the ability to register for free lateral flow tests for the employers and the employees. These lateral flow tests, or LFTs, or rapid tests, or various other numbers, these are the ones which are currently giving you a result within 20 to 30 minutes and will show you whether you are positive or negative. As with this facility, if you register before the 12th of April, you will be able to provide this free of charge. If you missed that registration deadline, then you will still be preferred to provide those tests. It's just you won't be able to register free of charge and won't be able to provide it free of charge. So please register as quick as you can if you haven't already done so. Even if your business is one which is not opening until, or not fully opening until June, please register now, because once you're registered on this free system, then it will allow you to benefit from the services that are being provided. Okay. Please also update your own COVID risk assessments. I haven't gone through these as yet, but the use of and the provision of COVID testing systems and testing kits, this is something which will allow you to monitor, ensure your staff are COVID free, or if they turn out to be positive, then it allows you to identify them and they can take this respective time out of work, socially isolating, so to prevent any future spread. Update your risk assessments accordingly, and local authorities are more than happy to help you do that, to go through what you should be considering on those aspects of it. Many businesses will have carried out a COVID risk assessment when COVID first struck over a year ago now. Risk assessments need to be reviewed periodically anyway, and certainly with the developments of COVID and the management of COVID within this last year period, we are in a very, very different situation to we were 12 to 13 months ago. So if you as a business haven't reviewed your risk assessment, please take these next few days, as well as preparing to open, to look through your risk assessments to see if there's anything else you can or need to tweak and amend within that. And as I said, local authorities and other business advisors are probably more than happy to help you in trying to give you some guidance as to how best to do that. If you identify any cases within your workforce, or any members of your public come to see you, your customers, and advise you that they are positive, please report the case or report the incidents to your local environmental health service. And there is that link on the bottom of that particular slide as to how to do that. In Hertfordshire, the Environmental Health Services take the lead on this, and we have been very, very effective in tracing back the people who are positive or suspect they are positive, and making sure that all the various measures are included in that. Without wishing to blow our own trumpet, we are one of the most successful counties in the country covering this aspect, and a number of other counties are following our lead on that. So, please help us to be as successful as we are with that as we can. Last slide then, please, Lauren. Again, this is just to provide you with some more information about the toolkit that are available. The Herts LEP provides a very good source of information, as does the Chamber of Commerce. Whilst they may not provide all the answers that you will require, they will certainly act as a first point of call and as a signposting service. Your respective local authorities can also be contacted either through that Herts LEP page or direct to your business or from your business. You will know who your local authority is, or if you don't, then find out who you pay your rates to, but it's the same local authority. And your respective environmental health service or business support officer, if there is those, will be more than happy to help. Likewise, trading standards are also able to offer a hell of a lot of information regarding business reopening in the light of COVID. So, we are all there to help and provide that service. So please use, and as I often say, please use and abuse us. As I said, if anybody has any questions, please send them through to Lauren, either through the chat or any other means. Then if anybody has any questions, please ask accordingly. Thank you very much. Lauren, back over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to hand back to Lauren. Thank you, Frank. So we're going to bring Lauren in here to answer any questions. We have had some questions in the chat, and we've also had a few businesses send some questions in. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren now to answer any of your questions and answer the few that have come through on the chat.
Thanks, Bridge. Hello, everyone. My name's Lauren Dovey. So I project manage a programme called Better Business for All for the county. And what it is really working with all the local authority regulators and the business support organisations, so Hertfordshire Growth Hub, Chambers of Commerce, and we're always looking at how we deliver regulation to businesses, so how we can make things more business friendly and improve those relationships. So I think what we'll do first is if I go around the 6 panel members and you could all just introduce yourself and just really briefly how you can help businesses at this time especially, and then we'll come to questions. So if I go around my screen, can I start with you, Joe?
Hi everyone, yeah, I'm Joe Tile. I work for Hertfordshire Trading Standards. In our department, we've got a sort of specialised business support team. So all we do is support businesses, especially at the moment with COVID restrictions. We very much look at the reopening. So obviously we've got the 12th, we've got the 17th of May coming up as well. So that's predominantly where we advise people at the moment when they can and can't reopen. But as well as that, we deal with people diversifying their business. So they might be trading online now. There's certain issues around that. Obviously, people looking to import new products, so perhaps hand sanitizer and PPE. That's quite a complex bit of legislation. So it's all that kind of stuff that we cover. So if anyone's got any questions around that, then I'm happy to take them a little bit later today.
And Lucy?
Hi, I'm Lucy Cowell. I work for Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service for a fire protection department. So we're the, I don't like to use the words, but the enforcing authority, if you like, for the Military Reform Fire Safety Order. But we are primarily here to support businesses in maintaining their obligations against that legislation. And making sure, obviously, at the moment, there's a relaxation in planning to a certain degree, and businesses are diversing. So for us, it's about supporting businesses in making sure that their fire safety remains in place. And I can give you some contact details later on if you've got any questions after today.
Lucy and Nathan, come to you now.
Hi, I'm Nathan March. I'm from licensing at Decorum. All of the borough and district councils will have a licensing team. We deal with alcohol licensing and entertainment licensing, but also other licenses such as pavement licenses at the moment, and things like street trading, which might become relevant to some people where they're looking at diversifying as well. I suppose from our point of view, for anyone that's thinking about a business, it's worth considering us in case you need a license for what you want to do, and there's no harm in checking the website or just giving us a call about that. If you do have a license and you need to understand what the impact of the regulations are, or you want to just check how that license needs to be managed during recovering from COVID, then you can speak to your local licensing team as well. And we're also working with our local environmental health teams and the police in terms of getting out to the businesses, obviously, like particularly the licensed premises like the pubs and what have you, and providing advice to them where we can. We're trying to approach it in a supportive way. But obviously, if there are issues that are serious, then the relevant departments and the councils would look to take action. But our view at the moment is certainly that we want to get out and make sure that any operators are doing things the right way. And I'm sure that most operators, if they're not, will be willing to hear advice and what have you from the relevant departments. So it's really about support and trying to make sure that reopening everything goes as smoothly as it can, really. But yeah, every district or borough will have a licensing team. So if you have got any questions, you can go to them and they'll be able to give you specific answers in relation to how they're approaching things.
Thanks, Nathan. Jeanette, come to you next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well and the sun seems to have finally come out now. So I'm well in Hatfield Environmental Health. So we cover a wide range of things, as you probably know, from noise, food safety, health and safety. But for the purposes for today, I just wanted to reiterate that there are 10 local authorities working across Hertfordshire and 1 county council. We very much work together. We have a weekly environmental health officers group, so it's a county group. So, and the aim of that is to make sure that we're giving consistent advice, guidance and any enforcement across Hertfordshire. So, so what happens in one end of the county should be the same that's happening across the other end of the county. With that, we're sharing also good practice. We also work with our BID, so our Business Improvement District, our Economic Development Officer, and our Town Centres team, as well as our local police, Safe Neighbourhood team. So each local authority is trying to work together to ensure that we're enforcing where we need to and supporting and advising where we can. This is important, I feel, for businesses. So, you know, clearly, if one business is complying, it's not fair if others are sort of getting away with it. So we're very much trying to make sure that everyone's, you know, working to the same level. And, you know, we really are all in this together. The reason, obviously, we work with the police is because there's a link there. So they enforce certain things to do with COVID, such as wearing face coverings. And obviously, we enforce sort of within businesses. So, and so it's important to know that where you may be trying to enforce what you need to with members of the public, or encouraging them rather, and then there may be issues, it's important for you to know that you can turn to the police for that support, or you may have local COVID marshals. So the other thing is, if you have got someone who does have symptoms, there is a process for reporting it. We have come up with a very sort of, well, hopefully simplified referral process. But I think, as everyone else has said, if there's any issues, just ring your local environmental health team. And if we're not responsible, or that's not our function, we'll make sure you get through to the right person. I think that's the key message from today. Thank you.
And Lisa Armstrong, you're here, aren't you?
Yes, thank you. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay. I had some technical issues earlier. So yes, I'm Lisa Armstrong from Hertfordshire Growth Hub. The Growth Hub is funded and delivered on behalf of Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. You'll have heard Frank referring to that. We act as that central point of access to support in the county. So a lot of the information that you'll hear this morning and the people that you'll hear from this morning, we can help you to navigate that support. So do feel free to come to the Growth Hub with any of your inquiries. We also, since last November, have been running a wellbeing and resilience programme in partnership with Hertfordshire County Council to really help businesses and their workforce to deal with the impact of COVID-19. We also, within our team, have a team of expert advisors that can advise on a range of issues, and we're also there to be able to signpost and refer to the variety of support that's available in the county. Our website also has a host of information, fact sheets, on-demand videos, and we also run events to keep businesses up to date on the changes that are happening during the pandemic and moving forward. So please do get in touch or ask any questions from me this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. So we have a few questions in the chat. So if we take those first. The first one was from Paul about wedding receptions. I'm not sure if, do you want to elaborate on that question? Was there anything you kind of needed advice on in regards to that?
Yeah, thank you. It wasn't really a question, actually. We were actually due to get married on the 26th of April and were called about 10 days ago to tell us that they can't have receptions. So I think you've got a correction on one of your slides there that you need to implement. So that was all really just a statement rather than a question, unless you're telling me we can now have a reception, but of course I've reorganised for June. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, but I'm not sure where that was on the slides.
It's on one of the earlier slides on the staging. So under the what you can do from April the 12th.
Okay, so that was taken from the government website. So possibly they've updated it in the last day or so. So yeah, thanks for that. We'll get it updated. Things are changing on the government website literally almost daily. Something actually to mention that might be useful if you haven't seen it already is on the Trading Safely, where you've got all the different sector guides. You've probably all seen that's kind of the main place for businesses to look. And they have the What's Changed section at the top. And if you look on there, I actually only realised recently they have that, and it does show you all the recent changes. So you don't have to go through the whole sector guide for whatever sector you're in. So that's probably just one of the most useful things. So then we had a question around.
Sorry, just butting in on that particular point regarding the dates that are provisionally put on those various step openings. In addition to what the government is saying can or can't be open, each premises, such as your wedding venue, you mentioned your reception venue, Paul, they obviously have the right to review how they would then implement the respective permissions. And it may be that they themselves have said, seeing as a reception can only accommodate 15 people, it's not going to be worthwhile doing, so we may choose not to do it. Now, clearly, I don't know where you were going to have your event, and all the best wishes for your wedding and the reception anyway, but in addition to what the government is allowing the initial or the first opening times for these things to take place, each individual premises business can then go beyond that date if it feels it's not appropriate for them to open accordingly. So just bear those in mind.
Thanks, Fred. I think the thing to bear in mind, actually, I think you can have a reception, but it has to be outdoors.
At the moment, certainly, yeah.
Okay, so next question was, are you legally allowed to require your staff to take regular tests, or in staff within their rights to refuse? I don't know if Jeanette or Frank want to comment on that one.
There's a whole sort of tranche of those sort of questions, aren't there, with respect to what you can require or ask your employees to do. I would say you're going to have to look at it under your risk assessment. You're going to have to say, this is, part of my COVID risk assessment is carrying out regular testing. While we've got, now there's an increased access to lateral flow tests and now being able to have home testing kits, we have always been actively encouraging employers to ask their employees to take tests. And now I would say it's quite a reasonable request. So I would say it's not a specific legal requirement, but it would be legally required if it's part of your risk assessment. And I should be look to Frank to see what his comments are on that.
Yeah, this is an absolute minefield of pros and cons and cans and can'ts. And both the employers groups and the unions they're all struggling with this particular issue. There's a lot of people saying that everybody should be tested and they shouldn't be allowed back into the public domain without being tested, and other people saying it's an invasion of civil liberties and civil rights. As Jeanette sort of mentioned there are a number of things that you as an employer needs to be aware of. By all means, look at your risk assessments and flag up that if you feel that your members of staff have to be tested before they can come back to work and be tested negative before they can come back to work, and by all means flag that up into your risk assessment. But also bear in mind your contracts of employment you have with your members of staff. There is the potential conflict that if you as an employer require your staff to be tested, but you have no provisions for requiring that, your staff permitting that in their contracts, this is where there is this legal challenge that's potentially out there, and this is why it is a minefield. It's been mentioned numerous times that certainly in the more social care or healthcare sectors, care homes, hospitals and the like, that surely they should have that provision to require tests. And again, this is where it's largely being challenged as the first point of call, that if for new contracts, it's potentially permissible to put into a new contract that you can only come to work if you're tested clear, tested negative. But even within that remit, there are still a whole raft of legal challenges. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't give you a clear answer to this. And by all means, have it as a preferential response. So as part of your risk assessments, we would prefer or we would request all of our members of staff to be regularly tested and only come to work if they're negative. But coming to work if they're negative, that's legally permissible because they're not allowed out if they're not. But having the tests is the difficult bit. So I think as far as a safety perspective from a legal side, by all means put it as a preference or as a request that your staff are regularly tested. And obviously if you register that to be register for free testing before the midnight on the 12th, then you'll get that free of charge anyway. Certainly once your members of staff have tested positive, and once they've advised you they are tested positive, then the law can kick in and they are not allowed to come to work, full stop. So that bit is relatively easy, but as far as making people have regular tests, me being a draconian enforcement officer as I would like to see everybody be tested regularly, especially if they're in that environment. The law at the moment is a little bit reticent on that, so I can't give you a clear answer, I'm afraid, sorry.
And yeah, and if I can just add to that as well, you know, we have had a number of workplaces with outbreaks, and in those types of situations, we would be, you know, that's something where we might actually ask as part of our investigation and our response to the outbreak. So yeah, as far as you can encourage it, and as far as you can make it as easy as possible for people to do so, make sure, you know, then go down that route. The other thing is to also look at the, you know, if they do, as Frank says, they do come back positive, is being very clear about what they can and can't do with respect to self-isolation, and, you know, where they may be able to access support or payment. So I think it's all about, one, explaining why they need to be tested, saying it's part of your risk assessment, and putting it clearly in there, and making it easy for people to do that. So whether it's getting home testing kits or getting them at work, or signposting to the nearest testing centre, and then being very aware of what to do if they do come back positive. I think that it is a bit of a minefield, and I think maybe that's something that we could raise as further discussion between us as regulators, or, you know, and as a part of the Growth Hub as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in regards to that, ACAS obviously deal with employment law. Lisa, I'm wondering from the Growth Hub point of view, if you've had any similar questions or any contact with ACAS, but if not, perhaps between us, we could take that to ACAS and see if they have got any kind of updated guidance on this for employers.
Yes, thanks, Lauren. Actually, I was just going to interject there, agreeing with everything that you and Frank and Jeanette have said. I do think also we did get a number of questions around this previously, and we did run some Ask the Expert sessions where we had employment lawyers on those, answering those direct. So, you know, if anyone does have any questions and wants to get in touch, as well as looking at maybe some you know, future information that we can get out, we certainly have a number of suppliers who are employment specialists that would be really happy to pick up and help on some of those directly.
Great, thank you. So then we had a question from Jenny in regards to will there be restrictions to outdoor music in terms of time that it's allowed to be played until in pubs, etc. Maybe Nathan, is there anything from the licensing aspect, and then we can do the environmental health aspect as well?
Yeah, so as far as it goes, entertainment's allowed to take place from the 17th of May or stage 3. So obviously until then you wouldn't be able to have any live music outside, live or recorded music outside. As far as I'm aware, what the government have done this time is they've removed all of the attempts that they made to sort of control things in licensed premises, like the requirement to have a meal if you're having alcohol, and curfews like the 10 o'clock curfew that they had before. And I'm fairly confident that that is the case with anything to do with entertainment. So once entertainment's allowed, the only restrictions that will be in place would be those restrictions that are already on your license, taking into account that a lot of live and recorded music's been deregulated anyway, and I don't want to try and go into exactly what the deregulation all means because it is fairly complicated. So from a licensing perspective, as long as you're not breaching any of your existing conditions on your license, following step 3, you'd be able to have entertainment as you would normally, with the caveat as to issues of public nuisance, which will still be an issue. And we're aware that obviously residents have been getting used to a very quiet environment, and so they're going to be more sensitive to noise than they were before this happened. So I imagine quite a lot of licensed premises have got some residents that don't like the activities that normally take place there, and I think that's going to be magnified when they reopen. It's probably worth Frank chipping in relation to environmental health controls around entertainment, just to really say that they still remain as they always are. But I don't know if Frank wants to say anything.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, happy to. Unfortunately, that is true. Most local authority environmental health services have been getting an incredibly high number of noise complaints coming through throughout the whole of this lockdown period, or the COVID period, in fact. And that's predominantly because people are at home and aren't able to go out. And also, as Nathan suggested, the background level of noise has reduced quite significantly. So any slightly louder events do become far more prominent. All of the other legal requirements and restraints on any business, especially as far as noise and social disturbance and antisocial behaviour and anything of that nature, they are still in force, and they would be enforced by the respective agencies, noise events, local authorities, antisocial behaviour, and some of the COVID restrictions by the police. So just be aware of those. As Nathan said, the actual formal music activities, they're not permitted as of yet. But even if you've got members of the public coming and going to and from your premises, especially if they've managed to have a good event, good evening in their own small group, a small bubble in your place, please remind them that as they're leaving your premises, that if they have to go past neighbours and residential properties, to keep the noise down a little bit, because the last thing we want is for them to have to advise you that your patrons are causing grief and earache to your neighbours. You know, we all want businesses to open and restart. We want to just trying to control it and gradually phase people back into some greater degree of normality. But as Nathan said, unfortunately, all the other noise restrictions, they still apply. And if we do need to speak to you guys accordingly, then obviously, unfortunately, we will do.
I'll have a little comment as well on that.
Please.
And I think it's really important for us to be quite pragmatic about the approach to noise, because, as you say, on one hand, we are seeing people's tolerance levels go down. Obviously, we receive a lot of complaints about all sorts of things, and the complaints we're receiving now are very apparent that people have less patience and less tolerance. When we investigate any complaint, we obviously have to be impartial. We have to look at the evidence before us. So we don't just go out there and slap a noise notice on someone the minute we get a complaint. So what I would suggest, and what I'd like to suggest particularly for licensed premises or anyone that's sort of going to be opening up again, is to look at having a noise management plan. It doesn't have to be anything major, but it's just something that you've actually sat and thought about, how your premises may impact on neighbours, and maybe have a little bit of a PR exercise with your neighbours. We quite often find that engaging with your residents or local residents does help, make them feel part of it, does go a long way. And then if you then get a letter from us or a knock on the door from us, it will help if you can say, look, I've been proactive, I've done this, I've done that, what else can I do? So just something else to consider. And again, I would say we are obviously busy, but again, if there's we'd rather be going out there and giving advice and helping than otherwise. So that's just another aspect that you could have a little think about if that's something that would be relevant to your business.
Thanks, Jeanette. So we had a few questions that were sent in beforehand. There's been a lot of talk around the outdoor structures, marquees, etc., and around safety of those. And one of the questions was around fire safety, and should businesses be considering anything in addition to what they normally would of fire safety if they have these outdoor temporary structures, or anything to do with fire safety and reopening, really? So can I come to you, Lucy, for that one?
Mute myself. Okay, so there's two questions there, really, isn't there? The general sort of fire safety, and then the outdoor structure. So I'll sort of talk about the general fire safety. Obviously, there is some relaxation with planning. But fire safety, as I said earlier, does remain in place. So you still need to be ensuring the safety of all your occupants within the premises. And I'll do a little bit of a run through on the sorts of things that you were probably doing before, maybe got a little bit out of routine with if you've been closed up completely. But your fire alarm system, make sure you're maintaining that with your weekly checks throughout the premises. And anything linked to your fire alarm system, if you've got doors that will automatically close once the fire alarm operates, make sure they're all working correctly. And obviously your 6 monthly servicing of that as well. You know, and we do understand that has been a challenge for some businesses. Making sure that you're testing your emergency lighting monthly, your fire extinguishers, that servicing is up to date, and just have a little look, you know, make sure pins are in place. If it's got a pressure gauge, that they're shown in the green. An important part really is having enough staff trained. A lot of people obviously have been furloughed. If you're not bringing all your staff back and you're only bringing some, make sure you've got staff that all your staff are aware of any maybe COVID measures that you've put into place. So, you know, entrances and exits. Make sure that all your staff are aware of what the new arrangements are that you've put in place, and that you've got enough trained staff as well. So if you've had fire marshals, depending on the size of your business, if you've got fire marshals, make sure everybody knows what they need to be doing in the event of emergency. Wedging of fire doors is something that we've been asked an awful lot about, obviously because of the contact. We would suggest, if you can, hold open devices that are linked to your fire alarm system. Otherwise, another option could be having like the hand sanitizer either side of the door, so that if, you know, people do need to touch the door, they've got the hand sanitizer there to use. But you know, that the fire doors are there to stop the travel of smoke and fire, and they're really important. So be aware. Final exits, I mean, we've all seen the one-way systems in supermarkets, etc. Consider the impact of that on means of escape. Make sure that they're within acceptable travel distances. That comes to, you know, reviewing your fire risk assessment, and again, making sure that any changes, any COVID measures that have been put in place don't conflict with your fire safety arrangements, to be quite honest. Emergency evacuation, again, making sure people, you plan, making sure that you've got enough persons trained, fire wardens to carry out those procedures, and that staff are aware of the new fire safety arrangements. Carry out evacuation drills, you know, with any new arrangements that are in place. And don't be afraid of something we don't see, and we encourage people to do. Annotate your fire risk assessment. So you put the special measures in, review it, consider it, note it on your fire risk assessment. Absolutely fine to do that, and we like to see it because it shows that you've considered it and you've shown due diligence. As far as outside marquees, etc., we know that that's been relaxed a little bit, but again, you do need to consider, keep those exits clear. Any special requirements for your for any patrons that pay, you know, customers that you have that need assistance in evacuating, you need to be considering all of that. Not overcrowding. Think about occupancy figures. We're always talking about occupancy figures, especially in licensed premises, for example, and make sure they meet the relevant, you know, if you've got new structures going up, new marquees, Frank touched on it earlier, but make sure that they meet the relevant standards. And think about the practical side of things, you know, obviously Great British weather. Think about forms of ignition, so heaters, etc. Just make sure that you're considering all of that, electrical safety. If you've got an ignition source and you've got a fuel, you're running the risk. We don't want that. So yeah, and again, annotate it, include it on your fire risk assessment if you're putting in a new outdoor structure. You know, you've made a change to the premises, review it on your fire risk assessment and consider it. And make notes, keep records of all your testing and records. It might not be a legal requirement, but if anything should go wrong, it's good for you to be able to show that you have done that and that you've shown due diligence. Is that all right, Lauren? Does that answer all your questions?
Yeah, perfect. Frank, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to add a point to Lucy's comments there. Going back to the issue regarding fire doors, It's been highlighted how important ventilation for premises and businesses is or will be as far as COVID control. And even at the moment, we're not supposed to be going into the buildings too often. That as that restriction reduces and the use of indoors becomes more available to us, please don't wedge your fire doors open just to allow ventilation, unless, as Lucy said, they are interlinked to some kind of fire detection device, your alarms or sounders or anything of that nature. If you are reliant on wedging your fire door open to increase ventilation, that doesn't count. Fire doors need to be assumed that they are closed unless they are interlinked. If you need to use ventilation, use a window or some other system of place, please. Don't wedge your fire doors. They are not there to be wedged open, and fire extinguishers are not designed to hold fire doors open, honestly. That was all I wanted to add, thanks.
Thanks, Frank. So we had a few questions around kind of terms and conditions. This would probably be a trading standards one. I think it's more non-essential retail when they reopen and things like refunds and things that they, if it's gone way past the date, how should they handle customers coming back in kind of months on?
Yeah, so that's something obviously we can touch on. Obviously, at the moment it's been click and collect for the last few months. That will change come next Monday. So I think there's a little bit of I guess on both sides really. You want the customers to come back in a reasonable time, but equally you can't leave it open-ended. So something within terms and conditions saying, look, you can come back for a refund within 60 days of the shops reopening. Having something like that, putting that on the website, putting that terms and conditions would be really helpful. That's slightly different if they come back and the goods are faulty, because that's sort of, I say never ending in 6 years, but yeah, that's dealt with differently than a change of mind. So I guess just communicating that to people, saying that actually you've got 60 days to do it, gives people the impetus to plan and come back and do that, because what you don't want to do is really leave that till, I don't know, August, September time in terms of working out things for the business. So just sort of communicating that in a softly approach in terms of can you bring it back in a good time, and even then there's a little bit of discretion as to what people have done. I would say it wouldn't be something that you'd done on them too hard, but just again communicating that whatever time period you've come up with for that, put it on the website, even put it up in store. People might come back shopping beforehand and then go, oh, actually I bought something months ago, now I know I can bring it back, I've got 60 days, I'll come back next week. So it's all about just that open and fair communication of that type of information.
Thanks, Joe. And has anyone else got any final questions? Okay, I think the final one we had that's probably quite an important one that a few of you can comment on was just around events. So event organisers, but also other businesses that are looking to events as a kind of way to diversify their business. And in terms of organising an event, small or large, things businesses should be thinking about and when to contact the council. So I don't know who wants to start that off.
I'm happy to, Lauren, in the absence of anyone else. As far as if it's an outdoor public event, I won't go to, let's say, so far as the Massive Rugby concert, but anything of a proper outdoor event, then please liaise with your local authority now rather than anywhere nearer the time. Each local authority has a group, a SAG, Safety Advisory Group, or something similar. They are set up with all of the multi-agencies that would normally be involved with an outdoor event. So police, environmental health, trading standards sometimes, highways if necessary, if the ground upon which the event you want to take the place is local authority, then they'll be involved. So it's a multi-agency group, and they can offer advice and guidance as to what would be expected for any outdoor event. Now it doesn't have to be a 15,000-20,000 people strong event, not a Nebworth House massive concert from the 70s and 80s. Even if it's a small 30 people village fair, those types of things, please liaise with your local authorities SAG group, What would be expected is that you provide a COVID risk assessment, detailed or sufficiently detailed as to highlight all the risks and the measures you're putting in place. The application form should cover all of those prerequisite requirements, but liaise with the local authority as sooner rather than later. Even if you're not intended to have your event until September, contact the local authority tomorrow just to put it on their books. As Jeanette mentioned before, we have a number of local authority cross local authority county-wide groups meeting and discussing. The safety advisory groups is one which is also covered by a cross-county group, and they're all locally assessed, but they're all coordinated also from Herts County Council as well, an officer in there. And we're in the process at the moment of employing dedicated COVID safety advisory group officers. Notwithstanding that, the roles are currently being carried out by officers within the local authority, and that can be for licensing and environmental health and others. So yeah, if anybody is thinking about a public event, even if you want to extend your premises onto the village green, for those of you who have such facilities, that would also be classified as a public event. Liaise with your local safety advisory group from your council. Do that tomorrow rather than the day before you want to have the event. Most local authorities have a requirement of a 21-day prior notification. Some it's slightly less, but if you aim for the very least 21 days, that should be sufficient for you to have systems in place. If you are unable to provide a fully compliant event, you are unable to, or you don't wish to follow the advice and guidance, there's nothing legally stopping you having the event unless the enforcement officers consider that it will be illegal or unsafe, in which case we can take a heavy-handed enforcement action to stop you having those events. So clearly work with the local authorities, work with the agencies, get it right beforehand. A little bit of inconvenience or slight alteration beforehand is a damn sight easier to address and manage than trying to resolve the issue after we've had to take enforcement action against you. So, get in with us first, and we'll work with you as best we can. I don't know if anybody else wishes to. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wishes to add any comments on that, but certainly that should hopefully cover most.
Frank, we're coming to the end of our session at 12 o'clock. The one thing I will take from this is there is free advice from our county council and all the different departments, free advice and help, and businesses need to reach out. We've recorded this session and we'll also share the slides and all your contact details with which department that you're under, not just with everybody on this call today, but with all our members and wider on social media, because I think people don't realise how much good free advice there is. So I'd like to thank Lauren, Frank, Lucy, Jeanette, and Joe, have I missed any, and Nathan as well, for coming along today. We're not finished yet, we've got a series coming up. So tomorrow, for those that are interested, we actually have COVID testing in Hertfordshire with Jim McManus. That is at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And then Lauren and all the speakers that we've had today are assisting with further webinars. We have another one which is on vaccinations, again with Jim McManus on the 23rd of April at 2:30, date for your diary. And then on the 13th, we've got another one with the County Council regarding the roadmap, the lockdown step 3, which will be approaching. So that's on the 13th at 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. And then we have another one on the 20th of May, which is staff safety and well-being, and that's from 11 a.m. to 12 midday. So I hope you've all enjoyed this, but the one thing I would say is we've got a great, fantastic team in Hertfordshire who can give years of advice and experience, and it's free, and they want to help. So we will be shouting that message and making sure that business, and don't forget to register, as Frank said, for your test kits. It's free. We will be doing that as a chamber. So thank you very much indeed. And we'll see you at the next one. Thank you, Frank and Lauren, for bringing this together for us. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.